A yacht was found drifting off the Australian coast with the engine still running, a laptop switched on, and food laid out on the table. All 3 men aboard were gone. I'm Rook. This is Odd Signal. Tonight, 4 ships found with nobody at the wheel, and the uncomfortable fact that only one of them ever really got an answer. The first of them is also the newest. Kaz-2 was a small catamaran, just under 10 meters long. She left Airlie Beach in Queensland on the 15th of April 2007, carrying 3 experienced sailors from Perth, Derek Batten, aged 56, and the brothers Peter and James Tunstead, aged 69 and 63. They were bound for Townsville, the first leg of a voyage around the top of Australia. 3 days later, a helicopter spotted her adrift near the Great Barrier Reef. Maritime authorities boarded her on the 20th. What they found is why anyone still talks about it. The engine was running. A laptop was open and powered on. The table was set with food and cutlery. The towelry, the radio, and the GPS both worked. Every life jacket was still aboard. One sail was badly shredded, and that was the only sign that anything had gone wrong at all. But this case had something the others did not. It had footage. James Tunstead had filmed on board at 10:05 on the morning they left. The video shows Batten at the helm, Peter fishing from the steps at the stern, a white rope trailing in the water behind the boat, choppy seas, nobody wearing a life jacket. The reconstruction that came out of the inquest runs like this: a fishing line fouled on the port rudder. One man went into the water to free it. A second went in after him. Batten left the helm to drop the sails. The wind shifted, the boom swung across the deck, and he went in as well. A boat still underway is out of reach within seconds. The state coroner ruled out foul play. He ruled out a staged disappearance. He found that the 3 men had drowned accidentally. He also conceded he could not be definitive about the exact order of events, but of the 4 ships tonight, this is the closest thing we have to a closed case. Hold on to that, because it does not happen again. The next vessel should never have been abandoned at all. On the 3rd of October 1955, the Joyita left Apia in Samoa, bound for the Tokelau Islands, about 270 miles away, with 25 people aboard. 16 crew, 9 passengers, among them a government official, a doctor, and 2 children. She never arrived. 5 weeks later, on the 10th of November, a merchant ship found her more than 600 miles off her intended course, listing heavily to port, partly swamped, and completely empty. Now the detail that makes this one hurt. The Joyita's hull was lined with cork, and she was carrying empty oil drums as cargo. She was, for practical purposes, unsinkable, and she had not sunk. She was still floating 5 weeks after every person aboard had left her. The logbook was gone. So were the sextant, the chronometer, the firearms, the lifeboats, and roughly 4 tons of cargo, including the medical supplies. The radio was tuned to 2,182 kilohertz, the international distress frequency, but the aerial cable was broken, which cut its range to about 2 miles. Nobody ashore heard anything. Below deck, searchers found a doctor's bag containing a stethoscope, a scalpel, and 4 lengths of blood-stained bandage. Somebody had rigged a canvas awning over the deckhouse, as though preparing to sit out in the sun. Investigators did establish how the ship flooded. A corroded cooling pipe let seawater into the bilges, and the pumps were blocked. The Court of Inquiry in 1956 criticized the captain for sailing with 1 working engine and a radio that could not reach anyone, and then it used the word that has followed this case ever since. On the evidence submitted, the fate of those aboard was inexplicable. That is the part nobody has ever closed. Why would 25 people abandon a ship that could not sink? Now, we go back further, to a coast with a bad reputation. On the 31st of January, 1921, the 5-masted schooner Carol A. Deering was found hard aground on Diamond Shoals, off Cape Hatteras in North Carolina, with her sails still set. 11 men were missing. Food was reportedly being prepared in the galley. The ship's log, the navigation instruments, the key papers, and both lifeboats were gone. The crew's personal belongings were not. The only living things aboard were the ship's cats. 3 days before she grounded, she had been photographed from the Cape Lookout lightship, already stripped of her boats, with a ladder hanging over the side. The United States government took this seriously enough to put 5 federal departments on it, and not only because of this one ship. A string of vessels had gone missing off that stretch of coast in the same period. Piracy was raised. Hijacking was raised. A message in a bottle blaming pirates turned out to be a hoax written by the man who claimed to have found it. The investigation closed without a conclusion of any kind. And finally, the story that started all of this. On the 4th of December, 1872, the crew of the Diamond sighted a brigantine sailing erratically between the Azores and Portugal. They boarded her and found nobody at all. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and 7 crew. 10 people, none of them were ever seen again. The cargo, around 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, was essentially intact, though 9 barrels were later found empty. There were roughly 6 months of food and water on board. The single lifeboat was gone. The last log entry had been made 9 days earlier, and it placed the ship about 400 nautical miles from where she was eventually found. She had sailed herself, unmanned, for 9 days. The theories have piled up for a century and a half. Alcohol vapor leaking from those 9 barrels, frightening the crew into the boat. A water spout, a rogue wave over shallow ground. Every one of them is plausible. Not one of them is proven. So where does that leave us? 4 ships, 4 empty decks. The most recent, the smallest, and the only one with a camera aboard, has an answer, and it is mundane and human and sad. A fishing line, a trailing rope, and water moving faster than 3 men could swim. The other 3 are older, larger, and still open, and the pattern underneath all of them is the same. In every single case, people chose to leave a vessel that was still floating. Something on board felt more dangerous to them than an open ocean. We have never worked out what. Which of the 3 would you want solved first? Tell me below. Subscribe if you want to be here when one of these finally cracks. This is Odd Signal. Keep listening for the strange ones.